The following interview contains some colourful language and may not be suitable for all listeners. Discretion is advised. Kia ora koutou, Tama here to welcome you back to the summer season of Pod Uni. In this episode, Colin interviews Lucy from Shit You Should Care About, or SYSCA for short. SYSCA is a multimedia news platform aimed primarily at Gen Z, but some of the earlier generations are big fans too. Lucy started SYSCA while she was in uni, along with her two best mates, Liv and Rubes. They like to take the news and focus on the more heartening aspects, making it more fun for you and me. Be sure to check out their website, shityoushouldcareabout.substack.com, where they have a daily newsletter along with heaps of other cool stuff, or give them a follow on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok. All these links are in the description. Over to Luce and Colin.
Kia ora everyone, I'm Luce. I am the founder of a media company called Shit You Should Care About. I write a daily newsletter. I post on all of our socials. I basically read the news so that all of you don't have to and try and make it as least depressing as possible. But I can't do this on my own. So I have a team of three, my best friends from high school. I think we were 15 or maybe younger when we met. We've got Rubes, who runs the commercial side of the business. She makes sure that we can actually make money. And she also basically makes sure that Liv and I, the two creatives, know what we're doing and hand everything in on time. And she's a legend. And then we have Liv. Liv makes everything shine. She's our creative director. She does all the designs. She also co-hosts the Culture Vulture podcast with me. She writes a newsletter called Culture Vulture, and yeah, we fill each other's gaps and we make the news feel accessible.
Super duper. Thank you. Yeah, and I can second the Rubes is a legend. She's been superb on those email comms.
She's such a legend. Everybody needs a Ruby. I feel like to have a successful media company, and the verdict's still out as to whether we're that, but you need to be able to find someone that doesn't want to be doing all the creative stuff all the time, that actually loves the organization and is really good at the keeping the business running side. Because if you're all just creatives running around like headless chickens, it's just not going to work.
For sure. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. I love listening to your podcast, and I appreciate how you kind of ease your way into them by just sort of chitty chatting about recent in your life things. This is not as recent as some of your other things because you've been up to tons of things in the past few months. But as a Texan, I want to know a little bit about your trip to Texas.
Okay.
Favorite food. What did you have there? You're like, oh, I love that.
Oh, the barbecue. I went to Austin and I like the cream corn. I didn't know. I never had cream corn from a can. And I went over there and like brisket, cream corn, mac and cheese. I'd never had proper mac and cheese. Austin, like this is aside from the food, all the music. Where are you from in Texas?
I'm from Austin. That's my hometown.
Oh my!
Yeah, I know.
Like literally want to move there. It was so cool. Seriously, I was a bit worried. I was like, Lucy, what are you doing in Texas? Like, you know, their track record with XYZ. But then I went over there for work, and thank God I did, because I think Austin is so cool. There was a live music in the airport.
Yes, in the airport.
Yeah. Oh, so I really want to go back. I want to go to South by Southwest. I need to go back.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I'm sure the SYSCA could find its way into South by.
I think so too. I mean, I just want to be there as an observer. But look, if they want me to host it, no.
Why not?
I know. But yeah, I loved Austin.
That's fantastic. Yeah, Austin is a fun city. But I was curious to know your perspective because, like you, I mean, I've been critical of Texas before for plenty of reasons.
Yeah.
It's and yet there are things to love, like it's creamed corn. So
Like it's cream corn and it's live music.
yeah. Do you legit think you could live there?
I actually do, except for how hot it was. I got there and it was
Mm.
like 37 degrees and humid. But I did think there was something weird about Austin that I really liked and didn't expect. Like, and the startup vibes over there were impeccable. I didn't expect it. I think that's why. I mean, I was only there for 4 days, so it was very rose tinted. But yeah, I thought it was sick.
Yeah. There are so many smart people doing kick-ass things over there in that city. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. It's
very
cool.
rad. Oh, cool. All right. Well, tell us the story behind SYSCA. Like, how did it come to be? Its origin story.
Its origin story. Okay, well, what happened was obviously Rubes, Liv, and we grew up in, I don't know if this is obvious actually, we grew up in Blenheim, which is a small town in the South Island of New Zealand. We probably met before we were 15, but from 15 onwards, we've been best mates. And then we all went to uni together in Wellington. And in our third year of uni, um, I was just sitting in one of my lectures and I was learning about international relations. And I also was taking media classes. And like, I've been there for 3 years. I knew that I was fine at school, I was a good student. But for some reason, I was just like, why do I not understand like anything about the world around me? I've been here for 3 years. I'm trying to learn it, but all the readings don't make sense. The news stories that you're linking to, like, there's just nothing that's making me like get it. And that was because they were all black and white and they were really long and they used words that I'd have to go and Google and then I'd get distracted. And so I honestly just text Ruby and Liv from the back of one of my international relations classes. And I was like, I think we should start something called Shit You Should Care About, where we can just talk about literally anything and everything. And Ruby and Liv were both like, fuck yeah, like, let's do it. Obviously, since we'd grown up together, we all knew what each of us were like. We knew we could do it together. And I think they knew that I get very obsessive with things that I love, and they knew that I would just make this thing like my absolute baby. And so then it started as a blog with us three writing, like we tried to write like 2 pieces a week. That just wasn't maintainable and it just wasn't like, it just couldn't happen. And so then one day I just was like, okay, why don't I just put this piece that I've written for a blog onto Instagram? And this was when I don't think you could even swipe through like multiple photos. I think you just put one photo and a long caption. Um, and I don't think we didn't feel like that was groundbreaking, but I don't think there was many people doing it. This was in 2018, and it was when like Instagram was just influencers sort of selling you teeth whitening and waist trainers and like skinny tea and stuff like that. And I guess people just felt like it was a bit different. And then we all finished uni. Rubes went and got a big girl job. Liv went and studied design. She first of all studied psychology and media and then went on to do design. And I went and I traveled and I worked, but I kept doing Shit You Should Care About on the side because I just loved it. And so just did it for years just because it was fun and it was nice to help things make a bit more sense for people. And then in obviously 2020 we had some global events happen, and Rubes and I were meant to move to London. We couldn't do that, so we were stuck at home and we were just doing what we could with what we had. And at that point in time it was daily no bullshit COVID updates where we would honestly just help people understand this thing that no one understood. And then at the same time, we saw the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, where we had a huge, huge audience in the States, which was great because it actually taught me how to be an editor. Like, this isn't about what one New Zealander has to say about all these global issues. I could draw on the audience and say, if you want somewhere to talk about this shit, we have this huge audience. It's not for me, it's for you. And so that was really good in terms of me going from someone that wrote the content to someone that like edited it and sort of had to make some I don't know, decisions on how we wanted to move forward. And then we had the Trump presidential election, the 2021, and then we had a New Zealand election, and it was just this awful recipe of things that worked out kind of well for us because people wanted to make sense of all these horrible things. And yeah. And then so we did it for free. Like we just did it because we loved it until we got some funding from New Zealand On Air to make a web series. And that was in 2021. And then Liv and I moved up to Auckland. And then when that funding ran out, we sort of thought, we can probably do this. If we really try, we can try and find some companies to work with that might help us make this thing a full-time gig. And so then we poached Ruby from her big good girl job and brought her back in-house. And yeah, for now, for about a year, this has been our full-time jobs, and it's the best. Launched a newsletter, launched some podcasts. There's a whole lot that I've missed in that story of what you should care about, but that's the crux.
Yeah, that's superb. I love that it has its origins in the back of a lecture hall, because I feel like so many terrific things happen at uni that aren't about like whatever a lecturer is saying. Actually, that's probably the least important thing, but it's the coming together of
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this was a direct, and it wasn't because the lecturer was a bad lecturer. They were brilliant. It was that it wasn't working for my brain, which is very like, as soon as something's not grabbing me, and I think this is for a lot of young people now, you can't focus on it and you switch off. So I was like, how do we make the news something that like grabs young people? And
Yeah, and especially at such a tumultuous time, like you said, right? So you're in some ways making like, not just making lemons out of lemonade for y'all, but actually like really helping audiences better understand these totally absurd world situations. Yeah.
I think that's what keeps it. People always ask me, how do I not get down in the dumps? Because my whole job is reading the news and reading these terrible things that are going on. And like half of that is because I make a really conscious effort to make it enjoyable to read, which means I also have to find enjoyable things. Sometimes that's not the case. Like I said before, I've learned how to be a good editor, and that means that some stories you don't put a funny story after, you know? If you're talking about abortion rights in Texas, you don't follow that with a funny story. So sometimes it's good for us all to sit with things. Other times you can put a Harry Styles photo in there to make people, finish reading the news on a high note. But then also I'm like lucky because I get to feel like I'm doing something about the news, the terrible news cycle. I have the privilege of not just reading it, but also then feeling like I'm turning it into something better, which is how I can keep doing it, because I genuinely feel lucky to be doing the job.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So tell us more about because you've got so many different media platforms now that you're across. Can you give us like a little picture into like that timeline? Like, how is it that you decided, oh, now we need a newsletter. Now we need this, that, and the other. What was missing that led to the impetus to create each one of these different kind of platforms that you're across?
That is a great question, because I've never been asked what made us start all the things in the order that we started them. So it's a great question. So we went from a blog to Instagram, because I think that was the first time I noticed you can't expect people to come to you. You actually have to meet them where they're at, especially with young people. It's something I tell lots of like older media operators if they want consulting or anything like that. I just have to say, you need to let go of your pride or your ego, and they're not going to come to you. Go and meet them where they're at. So anyway, we started Instagram, and then I've always wanted to do a podcast, and Ruby and Liv really didn't want to, but that was a case of, please just do this weird thing with me. And this was in 2020, so we were all locked down. We sold some tote bags, raised some money for some microphones, and then sat on my bedroom floor and released this shocking episode of the Shit Show, our news podcast. But I think that came out of just feeling like we needed a place to give people a bit more context and a bit more nuance to the news, because as soon as we started posting news on Instagram, I knew, I'd studied the media. I knew that this wasn't how people should be getting all their news. It was just a good way of giving a starting point. But then I was like, well, if we're giving people a starting point, we better like follow it up with like the next point. So we started the podcast. Yeah, I made Ruby and Liv, and thank goodness I did, because now the podcasts are like the best part of our thing. Well, one of the best parts. Actually, the newsletter is my reigning favorite, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
And then the next podcast, the Pop Culture Podcast, that was born in 2021, and that was because we needed to be able to make this a full-time job. And Neon, the New Zealand streaming service, they were streaming Love Island, and that's our favorite reality show. We said to them, let us make you a Love Island series. And they said, okay, we'll give you X amount of money. And then it turned into just a general pop culture podcast. But that one came out of like business reasons and has now become like the more popular of the two podcasts, because it's just a really fun one.
Culture Vulture.
So Culture Vulture, yeah. So we have, two podcasts. And then another reason we started the podcast was because we started getting shadow banned and threatened on Instagram that we had a few of our posts taken down, a few of our posts about Black Lives Matter, not for any reason that we can find out, but because when we reached out to Instagram, their bots or their algorithms decided it was hate speech or whatever, took them down. And then we had a your account may be permanently deleted thing. And I was like, we just can't have a Zuckerberg owned company owning our whole audience. That's just not smart, and it's just not gonna work for us. And so the podcasts were a way of diversifying that. And then we were really at this like quite a defining moment where we were all on this full time, but we only had an Instagram, a Twitter, which is great for engaging with fans. That's what we use Twitter for, and the podcasts. But it just didn't feel like enough. And everyone was like, well, you need to make an app, or you need to make a desktop website. And I just knew, I was like, no young people are going to come to a desktop website. No one's going to download another app. But like, what should we do? And then I met Duncan from
Slam
Duncan
dunk.
Grieve. Slam dunk, yeah. From the spin-off. And he became just my mentor / bestie. Like, he learned heaps from me about young people, but I learned everything from him about all the mistakes he'd made starting the spin-off. I could avoid them. And so that's one piece of advice I actually always tell anyone that I'm speaking to is, you'll have so many people trying to give you advice. You shouldn't take most of it, but as soon as you find the right advice, that's when you should follow it.
How do you know it's the right advice?
Your gut, honestly. if it's your like shit you should care about, I feel like most businesses maybe aren't an extension of you as much as this is an extension of me, but it's like, honestly, it's like another body part. If it feels wrong, most of the advice we got just felt really wrong. And then Duncan was like, hey, have you thought about starting a newsletter? And then I did so much research into like the Morning Brew and all these newsletters that were really big at the time. This was like early days of Substack, I think. Newsletters weren't huge. But then I just thought, this is something that really feels fun. It feels like I can do it. And then, of course, me being me, we went into another lockdown. Lockdowns have been very momentous and pushing shit you should care about forward. Went into another lockdown. I needed something else to do. Dived right into writing a daily newsletter. And like, I'm not a writer, but I write exactly how I speak. So, I mean, because you read the newsletter and now you're talking to me, and it's just like, I can't help it. I'm not a trained journalist, but I've done enough media studies to know what needs to be in there. And I have enough of a tone of voice to know that I can make it interesting, that I merge them together and make a lot of mistakes, but you're going to do that in a daily newsletter. And so, the newsletter came out of needing to diversify, also needing another product to like put advertising in or work with partners in or give away tickets, somewhere that wasn't owned by someone else. I think owning our audience has been really important for me, especially just because I'm terrified of, I don't know, watching what's going on with Twitter. We've had to move newsletter platforms because Review, who we used to send it from, is being closed down or
Yep.
potentially being closed down. And so that's another thing. As like a media operator, yes, you can be writing the news and stuff, but you also have to be, well, if you're a small team like us, you have to be watching what's happening in the like industry, because if Review closed down with all our audience there, we'd be screwed. We'd have no one left. So we've moved to Substack. Anyway, that's a very long way of answering your question of how did we decide to
No,
start these new things.
that's terrific. That's the level of detail I was curious to know about, right? And because each level along the way, it was about audience here, or it was about diversifying product lines, or grabbing a different culture vulture. I didn't know that it started from a deal struck with Neon, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
each one of them
And
has
that's
a
good.
different. Yeah, they complement each other in really
Yeah.
important ways, and also the challenges of like doing all of this on not a platform, or not all of it, but large chunks of it on platforms that you don't own, right? So
Yes.
that's a challenge.
Yeah.
And what about TikTok? You've got TikTok.
Yes. So we've leaned into TikTok. I, as a consumer, adore, like I love TikTok. We have this interesting thing where we made a very conscious decision at the start of Shit You Should Care About to not show our faces. So it's not about us. It never, ever, ever has been. I think in our very first like meeting we said, do we know who runs the BBC? No. Does it matter? No. And so when people often will go into meetings and they'll say, oh, but you're influencers, and we're like, well, we're actually not. We're not influencers in that sense of the term. Maybe we influence how people feel about topics or certain things. That's fine, but we don't show our faces. We're not here to do product placement, whatever. And so I think, the decision not to show our faces has been it's been very like telling, I think, of the way the business has moved forward. So when it came to TikTok, we had to do it in a way. It would have been really easy to be able to put the newsletter behind us and me stand in front of it and like talk through the newsletter, but without showing our faces, it's been an interesting challenge. So instead, we use TikTok as like a brand awareness. We show that we're on TikTok, we get it, we're with the young people because we love it, but I think if I spent too much time making content for it that was just going to get no views and swiped away into the black hole of TikTok, that would be, for a team of 3 and me making all the content, I think that would be a waste of my time. I think there needs to be really good news on TikTok, because at the moment people are accidentally getting the news from it. You're going there to have fun. You're accidentally getting 30 seconds of half correct and half false news. And it's not even your fault because you didn't go there to find that news, but you got it. But I just don't think that's something that like 1 or 2 publications can solve by doing really quality news, unless, and this is not in TikTok's best interests to do it, but TikTok should have like a little news bar, like news section, news vertical down the bottom, where they pay like BBC and New York Times and stuff to make content to go on there. But I don't think they don't want the news there. So anyway, that's another theory that's gone out of left field.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's really interesting. Just because I heard you and Slam Dunk, Duncan Grieve talking about that, and I heard your skepticism of like, oh, I can't believe all these young kids are getting the news there, and you propose some of these ideas that you're talking about now, and how important it is to get factual news there. But I was sort of thinking, like, how different is that need for news on that platform from the need that you saw a few years ago with Instagram? Like, how obviously the apps function differently, and those ways that they function matters a lot. But I was wondering, do you see those as like massive differences, or do you just see that as another opportunity for a different media organization or yourselves eventually to move into?
I think the difference was that when we went to Instagram, it was because I was trying to make sense of news I was already seeing, like make sense of, because I was still an avid news reader. So it was making sense of news that was from reputable sites and sources, and I could take it sort of digest it, spit it out in something you could understand. With TikTok, it would almost be fighting against all the misinformation that's out there, like hundreds of millions of videos with one account. And it would be like a David and Goliath situation. Like, yeah, Shit You Should Care About is here to debunk every single thing ever. And purely, like, resource-wise, I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
But look, I would love to be able to get on there and make really good content that also cut through and got heaps of views. I just don't know how to do that right now.
Yeah. Well, and maybe this is why more people need to pay for the news that they love, so that you can hire a team, have a little TikTok team, right? If people
exactly,
this is why you give to the people doing the good work, and they can grow and do more good work in different areas.
Honestly, I wish everyone thought like that. That's obviously, you've seen and one of our huge things. And one of the things I'm most proud of from this year is we launched SYSCA supporters, or Shit You Should Care About supporters, which is where, if you can, we've adopted the tagline, normalize paying for the media you love. So that, because as young people, we grew up not having to pay for newspapers, not having to pay for TV. We had YouTube, we didn't pay for Sky. We don't buy magazines. Well, I do, but I'm a freak. And so we get everything for free, which means it's been full of clickbait, full of ads, full of, fake stuff. And so we're really big on trying to set the value system in place now, because we know our young people right now can't afford to pay for the media they love. That's fine. We do not mind that. But if we start putting in their heads, just as you would pay for Netflix or whatever, something that you see value in, you should start seeing value in the media you love as well, because especially right now, it's so hard to make money as a media company. I mean, I was told this at uni. I was told not to be a journalist because there's no money in it. It's obviously not why anyone does it. You don't start a business in the media to make money, I don't think, unless, I don't know, you're Murdoch or something. But that's actually one of my favorite parts about our audience, is we have this gorgeous split between young people that are on social media and reading the newsletter and things like that, and then slightly older people who also love getting the news from Shit You Should Care About. But the 30 or the 25 to 50-year-olds will pay for the media they love, and it will basically sponsor. It'll make sure that we can keep doing this for the young people. And I think that is one of the best things about the platform, is seeing the older generations pay so that the younger generations can actually read good stuff.
For sure. Yeah, that's a pretty important intergenerational thing there. Yeah, because too often we hear the older generations just griping about kids these days, always on all this garbage complaining, and it's well, just pay $8 a month, and then you're helping them, okay? Stop complaining and do something about it. You have agency, you have money.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I get so many responses to the newsletter and it's always, I know I'm definitely outside of your usual demographic, but XYZ. And it's no, you're actually not, because you are not. The amount of people that I get every day saying that exact line, we write news for everyone. It's not just for young people. And in fact, it's largely for all of my dad's friends love Shit You Should Care About. And it's that's the coolest thing ever.
Cool. Yeah. See, that's the thing. I appreciate that, because so many people I bump into say, "Oh yeah, that's the news group for Gen Z, right?" Or people be like, "Oh, I'm only on it." I'll meet someone who's older than me who's "Oh, I'm just on it because I want to know what Gen Z's up to these days," And I'm like, but actually you love it, and and also your audience is way more diverse than I think.
Yes.
Than people think. So tell us a little about your audience, and it might differ across platforms. Tell us, demographics or location, right? Tell us about your audience on these different platforms and how you've gotten to know it. Have they evolved? That kind of stuff.
So first of all, one thing about us is we've never, ever, 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 ever had or used the phrase target audience. I just think when you're talking about the news, having a target audience is just a weird way to go about it. It's it's affecting everyone. It's happening to everyone. So anyway, we've always just I mean, like Ruby and Liv have never once told me to alter my tone to talk to certain people or pick different stories to talk to certain people. It's always been just go with your gut and just talk about whatever feels like it's bubbling or feels like people might not know about it, or the audience. Like half the stories I talk about is because I have been pointed it out by our audience, which is much smarter than me. So maybe that's our target audience, is people smarter than me, because they help me every morning do the news. But in terms of where everyone lives on Instagram, which is the place, we can't get many like insights from any of our platforms because we're
Because you
using
don't own
platforms.
the
Yeah, we
back
don't
end.
own them.
Yeah.
And it's just like, data stuff. We don't want to ask people for too much because we don't want you to feel like you have to give us things about you. But 50% of our audience is from the States
On
on
Instagram.
Instagram. Yeah. And that's kind of reflected across the board. And then we have Canada, the UK, Australia, and then New Zealand. I think only about 4% on Instagram is from New Zealand, which kind of works out relative to the size of these countries. But then in the newsletter, definitely I think about 40% is made up of New Zealand and Australia, and they're definitely the loudest in the responses, I think, because there's a lot of very Kiwi things that I say or do, and they really relate to it. So we have a very engaged New Zealand and Australian audience. And again, those same like top 5 country splits, very very Western countries. I do have a lot of people that respond to the newsletter from India, and the only reason I know this is because when I post TikTok is banned in India, and so they will like ask me to send it to them directly just so they can see what I've been doing during the day, which is so cute. Like
Love that.
Everyone is honestly so invested. TikToks, I have no idea about the audience because TikTok is just hit or miss. Throw as much shit as you can at the wall and hope something sticks. And same with Twitter. I don't really know what the breakdown is. Podcasts, again, I think about most of the listens are from the US, which is really interesting because I feel like the podcasts skew a little bit more New Zealand-y vibes, but that's cool. People want to know about New Zealand. But yeah, we have it. So we have a very global audience, which sometimes makes working with brands or working with organizations, especially New Zealand ones, interesting. It can be a little bit harder to strike deals to help us pay our rent because they see a whole lot of the audience is wasted because only a small percentage is from New Zealand. But that's fine. That's a growing pain.
All those Texans are just wasted listeners to the New Zealand brands.
I know. So if you listen to this and you're from the States, unfollow. No. Don't.
But it's interesting how it's different across the different platforms. Yeah, and actually, you said something about TikTok there that reminded me. Well, I guess because the Newsy today had Hank Green in it.
Yeah.
This is a weird non sequitur, but I thought this was an interesting point. So did you? I don't know if you saw the Hank Green made a video a while back, recently, about like the difference between
Getting paid?
no, not getting paid,
no.
between YouTube video and TikTok video. And he was saying, have you seen this?
No.
Okay, it's really. I think you'll find it interesting. He was sort of saying, look, the difference between YouTube video and TikTok is not the length, is not the verticality. The difference is on YouTube, you select what it is you want to watch. On TikTok, you select what you want to keep watching. That is the fundamental difference between those two. And I just thought that was so smart because I think that's such an interesting, like, to think about that through the lens of the news is really interesting, right? Like, that you don't have as much control as a viewer of, say, TikTok over what you're getting.
That is interesting. And especially in terms of the news, because imagine if on TikTok, imagine if you got your news from TikTok. So many people do. But there's like this one story about 4 students in Idaho, I think, that were killed. And we were talking about it at dinner last night, and 2 of us had seen the story, and then our TikToks were flooded with it. And 4 of us at the table had obviously not come across any of it. So they had no idea about this news story going on. So it's not this like one calibrated area where everyone's hearing and seeing the same news. It's like 2 of us can't stop thinking about this one tragic thing that's happened, and the rest of us are oblivious to it, all because TikTok's decided. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah. Ugh. And I'm sorry that the U.S. Continues to dominate your news coverage in ways that are just always tragic. It seems like.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
Fair enough. I always feel like I'm running around apologizing, especially from Texas. Like the first time I lived abroad as an undergrad was during George Bush's years, and I lived in Austria. And I just felt like I was constantly apologizing for everything that our Texas president did.
Oh, God. Well, but, I mean, it gives me something to write about. So
yeah, I guess so. Right, it keeps you employed. Hey,
yeah.
Actually, so that's an interesting question. Can I ask you about like the things that you write about? Like, I was thinking as I read through the newsie this morning. Not just how damn early you were awake preparing the newsie, but also like I'm really curious to know what makes the news and what doesn't. And I know that before, I think somewhere you've said, go with your gut, kind of where you have these dinner time conversations like you were just talking about, and like, not enough people know about this. So it sounded the way you've talked about it before as gut or instinctual, but like maybe a way of like pinning this to like a little more detail. It's like, what didn't make the news today? What?
Yeah. Okay.
Is that useful? Like, should I read through what the news is today, or do you have it memorized off the because you just wrote it so fresh?
I don't have it memorized because I'm like a sieve. I'm writing about it, and then I have the rest of my day to have to think about. So, no, I remember what didn't make the news today.
Oh yeah,
and it's like it's a bunch of things. So, first of all, on Monday mornings, it's always a big day because the news has happened over the weekend. I don't stop reading it, and the news doesn't stop happening. So my like notes app or my Slacks to myself is just things I've thought about over the weekend that I need to remember to put in the newsletter. By Monday morning, most of them get bumped because something news happened. But I try to have a mix of like hard news stories and then pop culture stories, and then sometimes a column from like Bell or Slam Dunk, or today we had Hank Green in there. And so I try to have like 5 plus a mundane poll. That's a good day where I'm not hungover and I'm up early and I'm writing the news. But like some days, if it's too much pop culture, that's one thing that I love, and that's hard about having an engaged audience, is that people will reply to me and be like, there was no real news in this today, or like I will often get it just and it doesn't affect me. It keeps me like accountable for writing a good newsletter. But anyway, so today, like I think we had quite a few like hard news stories. We had Elon letting Trump back on Twitter. We had the COP27 conference meetup where they decided that richer countries should pay poorer countries. What else did we have? We had Hank Green in there talking about socks.
Yep. Awesome Socks Club.
Awesome Socks Club. We had a mundane poll about Kit Kats. Are they cookies or is it a chocolate bar? What do you think, first of all?
Chocolate bar, and it's so far dominated by chocolate bar thinkers, that poll.
Okay, good. And then I can't remember what else we had.
So you had the Justice Department investigating Ticketmaster.
Yes. So that's like pop culture, and that's my favorite type of story because it's pop culture and it's like hard news. And I feel like that is where we shine. And I'm about to record a podcast all about that. Anyway, awesome. So there was these stories, and all of them to me were kind of hard news-ish stories, but that's because I bumped and I forgot to take it out of my intro. Like I was going to talk about Harry Styles and Olivia Wilde breaking up, but the newsletter was too long and that just wasn't as important. I was also going to talk about Qatar and the FIFA World Cup, but that needed more time. It needed more energy and time in the newsletter. So that got bumped, and maybe I'll do that on the shit show or in another episode or in another newsletter where it isn't surrounded by all these other stories. So it is gut instinct, but then it's also like editorial, like just things that I know are going to work with the audience, and length of newsletter and how much time the audience have in their day. But yeah, it's all still floating around in my head. I know where to put each thing that I've bumped. It's like an ecosystem in my head, right? So it's interesting. But that's a great question too.
Well, that's terrific. I really like that answer. That gives us a picture, because I think like the way you're describing it is like the things that need more nuance. Well, they need to go on a different platform, or
Yeah.
maybe a particular audience or something. So you could throw stuff on the podcast to really dive into it. There's also a timeliness to it, like Musk and letting Trump back onto Twitter. Like that's hot. That's coming now. That's a one and done event. But FIFA
Yeah.
World Cup, that shit show is
Yes.
going to be going on for a month,
Yes.
right? You
Yeah.
have space to like attend to that when you need to fill a gap sometime after it's been stewing in your brain for a bit.
Yeah. And then there's stories like I should really follow up. And if I could, I would, but I can't follow up on most of the stories I write about. And I wish that I could, because most of them have developments, right? But the vibe of the newsletter is people sort of want the overall breaking story, and only when it has a really huge development, like with Brittany Griner in the States, I follow up on that maybe once a month, because it doesn't have huge developments all the time. And so there's things like that I have to decide when to actually follow up on a story, and often I'll forget because the news cycle we lose interest. And yeah, so it's an interesting balancing act, but the newsy definitely serves a purpose that's very like a very obvious purpose in my mind, which makes it easier to choose stories. And yeah.
So like, how do you see the difference between news media, influencer, creator, like where those three overlap, and like why it matters?
I think because we grew up when influencer was kind of like a dirty word, and so we wanted to be able to be taken seriously in our field, which we toe the like we are in between, I would say, creator and news media, or just media in general. But I think it was important, like honestly, for legitimacy reasons, for people to take three young women in the media industry seriously, working on a platform, working on social media, which was something that when we started news were really shying away from, and they were trying to not lean into it, and they were like, it's not good for legitimacy, and no one should be reading the news on there. And then the fact was people were getting the news from social media, so they should actually lean in and just make it good. So I think for a long time we didn't get taken seriously, or we got underestimated, and now it's sort of, because we've insisted on saying we are a media company, we do the news, we also do culture stuff, we also create content on behalf of people. I also like making memes. Like, we do it all. And I think now that's what all news agencies want to do or want to be. So by us saying that we are like a news organization from the start meant that we are the one that they now look to either copy or to come and ask for advice about how we do it. And to which I always just say, if you want to reach young people, you need to hire young people. That's like the number one.
Yeah. Instead of being dismissive of young people and saying, "Oh, you're onto social media," go pay them. They know the social media really damn well.
Yeah. Or shit. No, lost my train of thought, and it was probably going to be controversial anyway.
Oh, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I honestly think it's the wisdom teeth medication that's making me like forget where I'm at. But no, I think it's a legitimacy thing most of the time. It's just making sure that we always center being a media company in front of everything else that we do. And if you don't see that, or if you want to call us influencers or whatever, then that's fine. But don't sort of come
I don't
and
think
ask
it's
us for
fine.
advice.
I think that's being dismissive of smart young women in a way that sounds pretty sexist.
Okay, it's not
fun. Can I ask you? So one more thing about sort of related to this, I think, and related to my head, is about authenticity. Right? You said previously, like you always make sure stuff is in your own voice, and yeah. Anyway, so I'm sort of interested in this idea of authenticity, because you share lots about personal life, right? Bolly belly, wisdom teeth, all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious to know what the authenticity, personal authenticity, brings to the news that you're sharing, or to the cultural information that you're sharing. Like, why the emphasis on authenticity?
Well, one, because I literally can't operate in any other way. Like
Love it.
I think the reason that we can be such oversharers is because we don't show our faces. So we have this level of our online life. People know heaps about us, but if they saw us in real life, they don't actually know who we are. So we're really safe and we can be really open and authentic. I just think, I think the two biggest values for young people is transparency about when you've got something wrong, and authenticity. Like, they want to know they're talking to a human, not an organization, because I think for so long, um, and there is such a place for this, especially in the news, you don't feel very connected to what you're reading because there's no tone of voice and nothing that shows why this person writing it might care about this. And it's not for everyone. It works for us because the engagement that being authentic creates means that people not only care about the news that you're writing, but with me, they care about how I'm feeling when I'm writing it. If they can sense I need a day off or a week off, they'll tell me. Like when I just had my wisdom teeth surgery, and I write the newsletter genuinely because I love doing it, and I get really bored if I don't have it to do. And so I sent one that I wasn't even meant to send, and I got these replies just saying, please don't be sending this if you're not up to it. We know you need to rest, go and rest. And that
Aw,
type of engagement, it's the cutest shit of my life. That
yeah.
type of engagement is it's what's going to make your thing successful, I think, if you are a small media company that doesn't plan to take over the world. We like being niche, and we like being just a small team doing what we can with what we have, and that relies on, I think, them knowing us as much as they can. Also, like the whole company and the whole way we talk about the news and we talk about life, I think, is based on like my upbringing and being a One Direction fan,
Mm,
and like growing up with brothers, and like every good or bad event that I've ever been through in my life forms the way I think about the world. And so it's helpful context for people to know that, like, if I'm talking about something like grief, it's because I have lost someone close to me, and so they know that I'm not just here talking about it because I have to. Like, I think it's another level of them being able to trust what we do.
right.
So
So so not only do you bring them the factual news, just like any other organization is, but you get people to care about the factual news by literally demonstrating you're caring about it in the moment.
yes.
Yeah,
And
it's
also,
beautiful.
it's like, I wouldn't be writing about this at 5 a.m. for you every morning if it like wasn't worth caring about. So
Right, absolutely. Yeah. Is there anything you don't share? Like, are there hard lines? Like, you don't share your photos, right? So,
Yep.
in terms of this authenticity, like, what are you like? We're just not gonna go there with
What don't
authenticity.
honestly, the fact that you all know that I threw up in a hotel lobby in Bali, I think this is why it works. It's because there's not much, because we don't share our photos. Everything else I feel like is free reign. Like even things that I've thought this is never going anywhere, I'm definitely keeping to myself. As soon as I'm up writing the newsletter, I'm like, fucking hell, all the audience should know about this. Like, this is so funny. Why would I keep it to myself? It's just how I'm wired now, that there's
Brilliant,
not that much that's off the table.
brilliant. I love it. Well, let's talk. Let's on our way out here. Let's talk about what's next for y'all. Where can people find you on all those different platforms you named earlier? What do you want to point people to?
The newsletter is definitely
I'm a
the
big
best
fan.
way to
It's
get
the
the news.
best.
It is actually the best. It's my favorite part. So the newsletter, you can find it at the link in our Instagram bio or on our website. Or if you just type in shit you should care about newsletter into Google, it should come up. It's basically me giving you the news every morning in a really fun way so that you can engage in those conversations at dinner without feeling like you don't know what's up. And then we also have a weekly pop culture podcast called Culture Vulture, which is it's really fun. We talk about the way that pop culture influences the rest of the world and how it's not stupid to be a fan of things. It's actually really cool to be interested in pop culture. We also have a news podcast called The Shit Show, because the name basically explains why the world is a bit of a shit show. And then we are on TikTok, Twitter, for however much longer that exists, and Instagram. Everything's that shit you should care about. You can find us anywhere.